puppetry as an art form, well, it's hard to say when it first began, because people talk about cavemen even using puppetry and shadow puppetry as a type of art form to tell stories. So really puppetry is as old as time. You know, puppetry is taking an inanimate object and bringing it to life. And so, you know, this has gone on for hundreds of centuries.
In 1947, a Nashville native named Tom Titchener was hired as a puppeteer by the Nashville Public Library. There, Titchener created many marionette shows and storytime performances that were held in the mornings. In 1950, Tom created Wormwood Forest, a show that broadcasted on WSM radio. In one episode, Titchener's hero Walt Disney guest starred on the program. In 1961, Tom moved to New York City, where he began to build puppets for the hit Broadway musical Carnival. In 1992, Tom Titchener passed away after suffering a stroke. Today, Titchener's legacy lives on through the works of Wishing Chair Productions. Led by Brian Hull, the company continues to create new shows using Tom's marionettes, as well as storytime performances at the library.
Well, I started out working at Opryland as a performer, and then went on to create this professor character. As you see, I'm still the professor here at the library doing the puppet shows and story times, and that is what directed me into children's entertainment and children's programming. And then about 14 years ago, this position opened up at the library. So initially I was hired to create some new shows for the old Titchener puppets. That was sort of the place to start with this job. And so that's what I did, and just sort of worked with marionettes, and then discovered new and other types of puppetry and explored that, the bunraku and shadow puppetry, and it just expanded and has grown and grown and grown, and is still growing after all these years.
Well, I actually just sort of got thrown right into it. I was acting and performing as a children's entertainer at theme parks for quite a while, and I saw that the opportunity had come up here at the library for a puppeteer, and thought it would be fun, and some of my abilities would lend themselves well to puppetry, so I just sort of started doing it. I'd only done a little bit of puppetry before I'd started here, which is what at the Birmingham Children's Theater. I was the cow for the Jack and the Beanstalk production.
I started doing puppets when I started working here at the library about 6 years ago. So I had really not worked with puppets at all before then. I was an actor, a film and television and a theater actor for about 25 years before I started working here.
This is a Tom Titchener puppet, a pretty famous one that's very significant. His name is Jerome the Gnome, and it's a pretty nice little puppet here. This is when Tom was still making the hard shell heads and hands. He eventually moved on to just cloth, but this is Jerome the Gnome. Here's another Titchener puppet that we use quite a bit, and this is our Cinderella puppet. This is Cinderella before the fairy godmother gets to visit her. Now there's another puppet right here that is also Cinderella, and you can see that she's got the exact same face. It's the same character, but it's a different puppet. And so it's just easier when you're operating a puppet, rather than changing her clothes, it's easier to just bring out a whole new puppet. So this is an original Tom Titchener puppet, and this is also an original Tom Titchener puppet, but the dress has been updated. Jennifer Klein made this costume for her. And then behind her here are the rest of the characters for our production of Cinderella. These are all Titchener puppets.
The members of Wishing Chair Productions are not the only puppeteers in the Nashville, Middle Tennessee area. Master puppeteer Ed James told his story of how he got his start in puppetry.
My dad went on a trip to Mexico, and while he was down there he picked up 3 Mexican puppets for my brother, my sister, and myself, and within 24 hours I had talked my brother and sister into selling their puppets to me for 50 cents a piece. I loved collecting marionettes, and so I started collecting Mexican puppets when I was just 8 years old. By the time I was 11, I had probably had 50 or 60 puppets. So collecting was a big thing I did when I was a kid. For a period of time, I worked for Animax Designs and Chuck Fawcett. We worked on puppet characters for Disney World and Tokyo Disney during that period of time. I learned a lot. He is a brilliant puppet maker and understands design and proportion really well. In that kind of a setting, he's the director, he's the producer, and so puppet makers and puppet builders work underneath him in designing those shows for Disney. When I was younger, I had trained with Linnea Lindsay, and she and her husband Hal were part of the Tony Sarg Marionette Company out of New York City. Tony Sarg helped create the original Macy's Day balloons for the Thanksgiving Day Parade that we see on national TV every year. And that group of people introduced me to the Puppeteers of America, which is a network of professional puppeteers, amateurs, and collectors. So I mentored underneath a lot of those professionals during that time in Dallas, Texas. Through that organization, I got to meet Jim Henson when he was alive from the Muppets and Sesame Street. Carol Spinney, who plays the part of Oscar the Grouch in Big Bird. He used to write me letters on the holidays when I was a kid. Bill Baird, who created the marionettes for Sound of Music, was also one of the puppeteers that I met when I was growing up.
Puppetry cannot be replaced by anything else. Puppetry has been around, as we said, for centuries and centuries, since the beginning of time, probably, and it's unique in itself. There's a saying that actors act and puppets are. In other words, that's not an actress playing Cinderella, it is Cinderella. It's a very pure form of storytelling. The character represented becomes the definitive character. And it uses all these different disciplines and styles of art. It uses music, it uses theater, it uses sculpting, it's painting. It draws from all of these different things to create, and of course then you have the story that is most important of all put together and presented in a way that nothing can replace it. Not television, not film, not even live theater. Puppetry is its own unique art form.